Good morning, guys. Today we're going to get some miles in the Hoka Skyward X to test how this thing does over a longer run. So this was one of the main concerns that I know a lot of you had when I posted that first run review, given the weight of this guy. It came in at about 330 grams, and last night out here I did the speed training shoe video comparing a bunch of the best or my favorite speed trainers, and one of them that we pulled out that was a favorite for you was the Topo Cyclone 2. And a shoe like that is nearly a third lighter than this. That one was 200 grams. So this is a little bit of a heavier, bulkier shoe, but on foot, so far, I've really enjoyed the miles I've gotten. And the reason I pulled it out for that favorite speed training shoe video is because it's one of my favorites of this new higher stack protective bunch for surprisingly doing a little bit of faster work. So in this video, I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of the Skyward X, and we're going to take it out for a long run test. Let's get into it. Okay, so we recently did the first run review of this shoe, so I will link to that or just go search it and you can see all my initial thoughts on it. So the runs I've done so far in the shoe, I did a 30-minute nice recovery run. It was my first run after the marathon, and by the way, this weekend is my first weekend back running after the marathon. It was only exactly 1 week ago. So it was the perfect shoe for a nice recovery run, but I was also getting a nice bouncy, fast feeling from the forefoot despite the weight. And so I know a lot of people are thinking of this like an SC Trainer V1 or a heavier, clunkier shoe that you wouldn't want to do faster miles in, maybe a pure recovery shoe. But for me, it's so far been more of like Primex Strung. Well, I haven't run in that shoe, but one of these higher stack shoes that people do enjoy for some faster miles, because in the midsole here, you're getting nearly 50 millimeters of stack back here, and it's this really awesome PEBA foam. So race day foam, then you do have some supercritical EVA to add a little bit more stability. So key thing here is it's not just tall, it is very wide. Let me go grab a shoe real quick to compare it to so I can show you. All right, so I just grabbed the SC Trainer V1 here, and if we take a look at the backs of these shoes, you can see on the Skyward, well, it is a lot taller here, but you also get a lot more girth or width here. So that's going to be the additional stability in the Skyward X. And so after that first run yesterday, I took this for a 10-mile steadier run on the treadmill. And sometimes I don't love the feeling of more cushioned shoes on the treadmill. It feels a little bit like too much protection, but it was actually perfect. And it was like running on the elliptical or using the elliptical instead of running because it was so easy to run. And so that's the spirit of the shoe that I've gotten so far. Very easy to run, very easy to change paces, and makes it feel super easy on the leg. So it completely takes off any of the burden. So one of the questions I've been trying to resolve on the channel recently, or it's not resolved, but one of the centering questions of the whole point of this channel right now is how can this technology support our training? And a shoe like this, the tech that we have in here, makes my legs feel fresher after the run, also makes me able to hold a higher heart rate or a higher effort, get a greater training stimulus with a lower burden on the body. And so that's what I'm all about right now. How can I increase my mileage and intensity while not increasing the effect on the legs? So 14 miles on this guy so far. Today we're going to take it out for, I'm not sure, 16 maybe. My goal is to get 2 hours to test how this does. That is my minimum for a long run. So with that, let's lace these guys up. So as I'm lacing it up here, the reason I brought out the SC Trainer V2 was because that has been, to this point, one of my favorites, if not my favorite shoe for days where I want to have it be easy on the legs, but maybe pop a little bit more pace. And so the Skyward X is a little bit heavier than the SC Trainer V2, a little bit more stacked, but it's also going to be more protective, and I felt some additional bounce. And so while you are getting more weight, you're also getting that additional bounce. SC Trainer V2 was a very bouncy shoe for me though. The other thing I want to test with the Skyward X, which is why I've been running in it a fair bit and choosing it for my long run this week, is how the durability is on this guy. And SC Trainer V2, this has been a little bit mixed. It really depends on how hard wearing you are. So if you look at mine here, this has about 100 miles, and you can see I'm eating into the rubber and foam pretty good, but some other people, Vinny B, I always shout him out because he got 450 miles out of his SC Trainer V2. And so we will have to see how durable this Hoka is. I will say though, and I mentioned this in the first run review video, very comfortable shoe. So the tongue is super padded, and they went for a comfort-oriented experience versus a speed experience. The Mach X would be more of their speed-plated training shoe, while this is designed to be that comfort cruiser with a little bit more speed capability. So with that, guys, no long talking before the run. We just gotta get into it, and then after the video, we can do all the breakdown and comparison. So let's do it.
All right, guys, first long run post-marathon. We got 16 miles, 1 hour, 55 minutes, 7:13 pace, and Coach Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers says the standard is the standard. This is not what usually constitutes my standard for a long run, and especially a long run test, so I apologize. I usually like to go at least 20 and get 2.5 hours, but today we went 16 miles, 1 hour, 55 minutes. I'm prioritizing rebuilding my mileage right now, and I want to be a little bit faster than I was last block on these long runs, so 7:13 pace is pretty solid. Now, I think, even though we didn't go 2.5 hours, I think I have some pretty good insights on how these shoes perform for a long run, because most of you guys out there are probably going to be going 90 minutes to 2 hours on your long run. So let me pop these off, and I might go inside and chug some tangerine juice or something, because I mean, you can't tell from just looking on camera, but it is hot. It is getting to that time of the calendar in North Carolina. Well, look how blue the sky is, but it's getting to that time of the calendar where we're going to have to start these long runs before 7 a.m. because it's already, let's check. My watch is not telling me, but it's good. It's a high of 82 today, so it feels like it's already 75 and very humid. So let me go replenish some fluids quickly. I can't have the shoes on in the house, so I got to take these off. But first things first, before we go get some tangerine juice or see what we can find, is it a heavy shoe? Yes. If you don't want a heavy shoe, don't buy the shoe. There's nothing that I can say throughout the rest of the review that's going to change this from being a heavy shoe, right? The scale does not lie. There is a lot of weight and a lot of bulk on this shoe, but you also get a lot of cushion and a lot of protection, similar to the Hoka Orlux slides. It's funny, if they put a slide version of a running shoe, it'll probably be this guy. These are really similar feeling, but all right. Nutrition first, then long run review. All right, guys, I'm back. It is 12:23, 12:24. That was a long intermission on my end. Did lunch, shower, and everything, but let us talk through long run performance of Skyward X. All right, guys, so 16-mile long run or medium long run in the Hoka Skyward X. We still got about 2 hours, and 2 hours is that magical sweet spot for long run length where a lot of the developments happen in our body. We start flipping the switch on some of those big aerobic developments once we cross that 2 hour threshold. So we hit it nearly exactly today, 1 hour, 55 minutes. Next week, I'll probably aim to do a little bit longer depending on how I feel, but recovery is feeling great so far. Of course, today was probably the most tired my legs will ever feel on a long run because I just got a marathon PR last weekend, which is one of the great reasons why I wanted to choose the Hoka Skyward X today. And so performance on the run, this is a very comfortable shoe. That is the number one quality of it when you lace it up, when you put it on, and it is thrusting Hoka back into the spotlight of max cushion shoes. And as I said on the first run review, this is the most Hoka shoe of all time. It's expensive, it's got a big stack, and it looks kind of funky. I actually like the way it looks. It reminds me of something Tinker Hatfield might design if he were a running shoe designer and not Jordan. But regardless of the looks, it performs well too. You got nice bounce in the forefoot, and it felt like the sweet spot for landing was
closer to the front of the shoe. That's not to say it felt bad for heel striking, but as I was picking up the pace and landing right in the front of the shoe, it reminded me a lot of the Hoka Cielo X1, which is the racing counterpart to the shoe. So this has a little bit more stack height than the Cielo X1. It also has a little bit more foam in the back to make it friendlier for heel strikers, but really similar feeling shoe in that you get a ton of protection, you get some nice roll, and you get some bounce when you pick up the pace. And the other reason why it's similar to that shoe is because it is a heavy shoe, and fortunately that weight didn't come at a huge penalty for me. I felt that because I was putting some force down into the shoe, and I was running most of this at about a 7:10 to 7:30 pace today, which is at my faster end of my everyday mile pace, and it felt really natural to be running there. So great for everyday mile zone for me. And then when I was running faster, it felt nice because of that PIBA up in the forefoot. And so the fastest I went on this run today was about 6:30, which was nearly probably exactly my marathon pace from last week, which was 6:28. And at that marathon pace, it felt fun. It felt super protective. It's, again, not a lightweight shoe, but I didn't feel the penalty at marathon pace, even at the end of a 2-hour run, because of how much foam and bounce you get. And so there's some shoes where they're heavier, but you're not going to be getting the most benefit from it. For example, Saucony Ride 17. That is one that I came down pretty hard on Saucony a few days ago, and I didn't hate the shoe by the end of my double day, but I came down on them hard when we did the weigh-in and I did the jog test against the Triumph, because it's heavier than the Triumph with less stack height and a firmer feel. So didn't feel as protective as the Triumph. So in that case, the additional weight you're getting, it's not a good thing. And here, the additional weight gives you a lot of protection, a lot of bounce, and it's weird to say my legs feel fresh the week after a marathon, and they don't feel necessarily fresh, but maybe it's like the fresh crab legs you might get from the grocery store that have been sitting there for 12 hours, that kind of fresh. So that's the kind of fresh that my legs feel after running in the Skyward X. I do feel like I could have gone to 20 if I really wanted to and just jog out the last 30 minutes, but that's not really the phase of training I'm in right now. I don't need to chase mileage this week. I'll get back up to 100 next week or probably the week after. So decided not to be a hero, which is still the number one rule of marathon training. Do not be a hero. And I'm not training for anything in particular right now. I got to find my next goal, but we're in the marathon training mindset. My guy Rob Barnett commented on my Strava. I just checked when I posted the Skyward X. He said, the grind never stops, and I got to reply back to him and tell him that's because the job ain't finished. So we're still grinding out here, still getting some miles, and this was a great shoe if you are going to be pushing yourself up to higher mileage levels and want that protection. And so that's really the thesis of this shoe. It is arguing weight does not matter if you're getting protection, and I'm buying what they're selling with this shoe. Now, one thing we have not talked about today, and before we get into this, to close it out, performance is great for what you're getting, but it does feel like a heavy shoe. Feels great when you land at the forefoot, is a little bit firmer when landing in the back because of the carbon fiber plate. But the one thing that I want to talk about is value and price. This is the elephant in the room, no pun intended, because this is the size of an elephant. But that's really going to be the main question for a lot of people out there. Is it worth it at $225? And so if I think about other shoes, 200 up, we have Asics Super Blast, of course, and On Cloud Monster Hyper. And now I'm going to get this up to 100 at some point soon so we can do the full comparison, and I'll probably do some dedicated comparison videos, but just think about what those two shoes offer, right? And actually, let's go up there and do a little bit of a comparison now because I think it might be useful. So hold on. All right, so comparison time. Thinking about what these shoes offer, we got the Skyward X, SC Trainer V2. Let me go grab those other two shoes. All right, so we have our lineup here. Skyward is what we ran in today. So if we think about the main competitor that a lot of people are going to be comparing the Skyward X to because of price, Asics Super Blast, they are both very protective, and we already have an ant on this. They're both very protective, but with this, there was no magic feeling, and that's the best way I could describe it. It's not a super bouncy ride. We're getting a ton of speed assistance right out of the box. It's more of a slow burning shoe, and I think that's why you guys like it, because it's not a super crazy feeling. It just works well. If it works for you, it works well for a variety of paces and runs and keeps your legs feeling super protected. Now, benefit of this shoe is FF Turbo is super light, so this is much lighter than any other shoe with this much stack and a lot lighter than the Skyward X. And so Skyward X is a heavy shoe, but I got a lot more bounce, especially out of the box. I got a lot more bounce from the Skyward X on a long run, and it didn't feel like I had to work as hard to maintain the same pace as I do in the Super Blast. Sometimes the Super Blast feels like it's pushing me a little bit to work more out there on the run, and it doesn't leave my legs feeling sore or beat up at all. But Skyward has a little, even though it's heavier, has a little bit more of a rocker, a little bit more rolling, and I do think you get some benefit from the plate reinforcing the rocker here and pushing you along. So for me, I enjoyed on a long run the Skyward X a little bit more than the Super Blast. And also when I ran fast in here, sometimes with the Super Blast, I felt like I could fight against foam a little bit. I didn't get that in the Skyward X. When I was running fast, that was one of the most enjoyable parts of the shoe, surprisingly. And I said this yesterday. I said I felt like Babe Ruth calling my shot, and I think I'm going to really like the shoe for speed work. And I do. I loved it for running marathon pace at the end, for that fast finish when my legs are feeling beat up. It's great to have this much cushion here. And I remember last summer running in the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3 for long runs and trying to fast finish. That is one of the worst feelings in the world, when your legs are tired and you feel like you're just compressing the foam all the way to the ground and you're not getting any additional bounce, pop, or roll. That's not going to happen in the Hoka Skyward X here. So great stability out here, and both of these shoes are really stable, but great stability out in the back. And then I did get that bounce in the forefoot. So a little bit bouncier, a little bit softer in the forefoot than the Super Blast, but very supportive. So I think people who liked the feeling of protection in the Super Blast but want something a little bit more fun, that's what I'm getting on the Skyward X. And of course, I'll do an update once we get this to 100. Now, SC Trainer V2, this guy is currently, it still has to be at number one until I get the Skyward X to 100 miles, but this is currently my favorite for this just mileage, time on feet, long run shoe where I'm not ripping off marathon pace. And funny enough, even though the SC Trainer V2 is a little bit lighter and also has a carbon fiber plate, I preferred the Skyward X for fast running. I still think this might be a nice option for recovery runs, a nicer option than the Skyward X, maybe because it's lighter, not as hard to turn over the legs. But for the faster running, fast finish long runs, I liked the Skyward X over the SC Trainer V2. One thing I will say though, in favor of the SC Trainer V2, much softer feel for landing in the heel. They both have really nice curved rockers here, but SC Trainer V2 has a much softer landing feel in the heel. And it also, though, that means it's not going to be as protective feeling. It is a very protective shoe, but not as much as the Hoka here, just because of how much ridiculous stack you're getting. I called it, what did I say the other day? They went full irresponsible mode with this stack on the Skyward X here, which is what New Balance had in the SC Trainer V1, but they slimmed it and trimmed it down a little bit in the V2 here. And so if you liked the V1, if you liked SC Trainer V1 and you felt V2 was a little bit of a half measure, maybe not as much cushion, it lost some of that fun bounce, it became too staid and serious and slim, I think you're going to like the Hoka Skyward X. And it's funny because I tried the SC Trainer V2. This was before I was still addicted to running shoes back then. This was my gateway. I was buying a lot of shoes back then, but not reviewing them yet on YouTube. And I ended up sending the SC Trainer V1 back because I didn't like the feeling of fighting against the foam. I also was running probably 40 to 50 miles a week. This is when I was training for Charlotte 2022. So I didn't quite get the benefit of what the SC Trainer V1 was designed to do. But this is reminding me of the parts of that shoe which I did like, which were the bounce, the feeling of that softer foam, the fuel cell from the New Balance, the bounce paired with the carbon fiber plate. I'm getting a lot of that in the Hoka, and then also just the feeling of having 50 millimeters of stack and running like that. It's almost like running on a treadmill where you just get a super soft feel compared to smash it on the pavement out here. So SC Trainer V1 fans will like this shoe. Heavier than the V2, a little bit more protection than the V2. I still think the V2 is a better option for recovery runs because it's a little bit lighter, but I prefer this for faster running because for me, I'm not compressing the foam as much in the forefoot, which is nice. It can stand up a little bit more to my foot strike. And we'll see as we get this to 100 miles, we will see how that progresses. Now, I should mention SC Trainer V2 here is $180, but it still is in this category that we're comparing right now. So last one here is the On Cloud Monster Hyper. And I brought the Cloud Eclipse into the lab recently. And I also brought the Cloud Monster Hyper. And so the Eclipse is more of like an SC Trainer V2, actually. It felt really similar to that shoe, but it doesn't have PIBA. It has the Cloud Tech phase, whereas this guy has the PIBA. It's lighter than the Cloud Eclipse, and it's designed more for speed training. So I wouldn't necessarily put it up as a competitor to the Skyward X. If you want to spend $450 on a 2-shoe rotation, this would be an awesome 2-shoe rotation. So these are more shoes that could work together, or they're the types of shoes that could work together versus direct competitors. So Cloud Monster Hyper here is a little bit lighter weight, less protective. You still get a lot of cushion here. It's up near 40 millimeters. I will do a long run test with this guy, but it's not necessarily the same sort of protective, mileage eating, crazy stack shoe as the Skyward X. And so this is a little bit lighter. This is more of that light, fast daily option that's still protective. Hoka's, you're really going to see the benefit of this once you're going up past that hour mark, which we saw today. So these are 2 shoes that I got to get to 100 because I've really enjoyed all my miles in the Cloud Monster Hyper here. I will say, talking about firmness, this is also on the firmer end of the spectrum, especially with the Cloud Tech, the standard EVA. And then similar to the Skyward X, actually, in the front, you see this soft PIBA here. And so thinking about value, these are some of the other options. I know it's going to be hard to knock the Super Blast off of the pedestal here. And because of the lighter weight, I think a lot of you are going to enjoy the Super Blast more. And we don't have durability yet on the Skyward X, so that is going to be a question mark, but in favor of the Skyward X is super bouncy, similar to the SC Trainer V2, and offers more protection, so you're not going to be bottoming out like you might get in a Saucony Endorphin Speed 3 or even a Speed 4, and it is very stable out there, and I'm, like I said, the most beat up I'll ever be probably going into a long run, and it was the perfect shoe for today. Now, I'm going to keep bringing this shoe out until you guys are sick of hearing me talk about it. Saucony Endorphin Pro 4. It is the same price as the Hoka Skyward X, and you're getting a much lighter weight in a shoe designed for racing, but with some elements that make it a really great training shoe. So the upper here is more of a training upper. It has a decent amount of padding while still being lightweight. You got the stretchy tongue. You get lots of rubber. And so I think this is probably the best value shoe, new shoe on the market right now, because it undercuts the whole competition by 10%. And it's the same price as these new training shoes that are coming out, Cloud Monster Hyper and Skyward X, that aren't nearly as battle tested as the Endorphin Pro line and aren't going to be as great for, frankly, fast workouts and long runs. You're still getting the protection from the PIBA foam, you're getting the carbon fiber plate, and it's all coming in a lighter package. And so I know we have some debate on whether or not it's great to do workouts and race and long runs in your racing shoe, but I'm increasingly thinking that it might be good to get more time on feet in our racing shoe before the race to get comfortable running race pace in it if it is a durable shoe. Shoes like Vaporfly, that's not going to be those. The Zoom X tends to lose its bounce pretty quickly, but something like this, my last pair of these, the Pro 3, lasted forever. So I think if you're looking at buying one shoe and you want something for long runs and faster workouts, would I be looking at the Skyward X? Probably not. It's a great long run shoe, but I think the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4 here, this is the best value long run shoe you can buy. And of course, you might want to rotate it with a simpler shoe without a plate, but the same thing would be said about the Hoka Skyward X. Other thing you could do is, if you want to do your fast long runs in the Skyward X and then put the Pro 4 on race day, you will be absolutely flying after you drop that weight. So that's another thing you could do. But there you have it, guys. That is a little bit of an overview of some of the other options I'd be looking at if I were considering the Skyward X and how they do on long runs. Cloud Monster Hyper is the only one that I still need to take out on a long run past 2 hours. So hopefully within the next few weeks we'll get that, and then I can do a little overview of shoes that this is similar to. But so far this has been more similar to Boston 12, Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 than really these types of shoes right here. But I thought I'd bring it out because of the price and the whole
value equation. So last actual thing I will say about price and value equation, I have done regular daily miles in the Hoka Skyward X. So fairly versatile shoe that felt great on a long run and a shorter run. So we'll see if the durability holds up at 100 miles. We'll do that check-in, and the 100-mile review doesn't always give us everything we need to know about a shoe, but it does give us, I used this word earlier this week, we can extrapolate from that to get a little bit of a sketch of how a shoe might perform at 200 or 300 miles. So stay tuned for that. As always, guys, I appreciate you watching. We might have to pop in later with one more thing, I don't know, but if not, I'll be back tomorrow with another video. All right, guys, one more thing today. We have the Hoka Cielo X1 here, and I actually got a comment asking me to compare the Hoka Cielo X1 with the Skyward X and which shoe to get if you want something fun and bouncy. So main differences, let me grab the Skyward X. So let's go over the main differences here. Midsole foam, Hoka Cielo X1, 100% PIBA. So there's two different types of PIBA, but that means it's going to be a little bit softer feel underfoot. You don't have that firmer supercritical EVA, and very bouncy, even bouncier than the Skyward X, which is a pretty bouncy shoe. It also means the weight of the Cielo X1 is going to be lighter, and somebody left their chopstick here. I think this is Mason's. But the weight of the Cielo X1 is going to be a lot lighter, as in 50 to 60 grams lighter than the Skyward X here. And that is noticeable out there on the run. And I know people are saying that the Cielo X1 is a heavy shoe for racing, which it is, but compared to the Skyward X, feels a lot lighter on foot. Now, other thing is midsole geometry here. So the Skyward X did have a nice rolling feel up at the front, but it was most noticeable when I was landing at the sweet spot. So plodding along, landing more in the back or the middle, it was comfortable, but I wasn't getting aggressively pushed up onto my toes, which is what I prefer in a training shoe like this, where you want to be able to do relaxed daily miles and maybe some faster marathon pace work in the long run. That's a good setup because I didn't feel like I had to pick up the pace to 30 seconds, 45 seconds faster than I normally would. Hoka Cielo X1, on the other hand, really wants you to land up in the midfoot to forefoot. If you look at the back here, it's similar to the Mizuno shoes where they do less foam right up at the back here, and you get a little bit of a heel cutout. So you can see right here, that's where that 40 millimeter stack is, and then up towards the midfoot, it's 46 millimeters. They did that to get around the World Athletics rule, but that means if you're a heel striker, it can feel a little bit like trying to get over a hump when you land on the back of the shoe and then roll forward, which isn't always my favorite feeling for relaxed miles. So I would actually take the Skyward X over the Cielo X1 if I wanted something more for daily miles, or that could be used more for daily miles without feeling like I had to modify my form or run a certain way. And that is something that I find with a lot of the faster, more aggressive race shoes. They do, like the Sky Paris, like the Alpha Fly, like this shoe, they do make you modify your form to run in a certain way. If you're not normally a midfoot to forefoot striker, they put you up on your toes a little bit more. So this definitely puts you up on your toes more. The midfoot geometry and midsole geometry in general is a lot more aggressive, so it has a lot more of that rolling rockered feeling and a little bit more bounce. And then if you take a look at the bottom here, durability, you can see on the Cielo X1, I have 50 miles on this guy, and it's already chewing into the foam pretty good here. So if you are a heel striker, again, you're going to be chewing up through this foam pretty good. I don't know if that's going to affect the performance of the shoe. It might not, because we had that exposed foam on the Mach 5 and it didn't affect the performance of the shoe. But you are going to get that wear and tear versus Skyward X here. You get a lot more rubber coverage. And there's a lot thicker rubber on this shoe, it looks, in general, compared to the Cielo X1. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to do a full comparison of these shoes. Maybe I'll do a workout in them. But in terms of who these are best for, Cielo X1 is lighter, faster, bouncier. If you want something to race in as well as train in, definitely Cielo X1. I would not be taking the Skyward X out to train, no matter how fast I was saying it felt and how good it felt at fast paces today. It's a little bit too heavy for me personally to take out for a half marathon or a marathon, even though I did take it up for 2 hours today. So Cielo X1, if you want to train and race in something, definitely this one. This is the one I would get if you want a little bit more comfort underfoot. It's not going to force you to modify your form. It feels a little bit more natural to run in at a variety of paces, and a little bit better stability in the back. So if you look at these here, you will see on that topic of stability,
Skyward X is definitely a little bit wider. So there you have it, guys. These are both two fun shoes. I've enjoyed my miles in all of them so far. Just that Cielo X1 is probably not going to work for everybody. Feels a little bit awkward for me at some paces, whereas Skyward X has felt pretty good at every pace I've done in it so far. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow.